I'm here with Aneil Mishra, one of our panelists. Thank you for being here.
Oh, glad to be here.
And what do you think is important about this summit today and building trust in organizations?
Well, I think as many of the speakers have already mentioned and elaborated upon, we are really in a crisis of a lack of trust, and it's not just business organizations, but it's also government, religious institutions. A number of them across the board, educational institutions, have lost a great deal of trust among their stakeholders. So whatever we can do, both as academics, consultants, and practitioners to help get, I guess, organizations back on the right path, I think is critical. I think in my own work that I've done with my wife and co-author, who's a marketing professor, so she'll look at it from a slightly different lens, but and our other colleagues across the country and around the world, there are a number of different critical attributes of trustworthiness that are so important, not for just leaders to demonstrate, but for organizations through their practices and processes, as Bob mentioned at the beginning of this morning. We call it, just for simplicity, the ROCC of trust. So it's being reliable, being open and honest, being competent, and being compassionate. So I think that was quite synonymous with what was said by the father at the beginning of the morning about being confident and compassionate and committed to the betterment of the people around you, especially those who are the most vulnerable, the most in trouble. I think what it means in our present context to build this ROCC of trust, for reliability's sake, it means to first of all admit that you've made some serious mistakes if you have in an organization. And I think if you're critical enough, you will identify plenty of mistakes. They talked about whistleblowing earlier. So every organization, as the gentleman from GE says, makes mistakes. So it's important to just simply humbly admit that, and then try to develop some clear metrics that will help you identify what those mistakes could be in the future. And then I think most importantly, to be more reliable, is to reward people for preventing those mistakes. It's so much harder to see that. It's not the visible behaviors or the firefighting that so often gets rewarded, but the fire prevention. And the more that you have that proactive stance, the more reliable I think you'll be as an institution. In terms of being open and honest, I think you have to be crystal clear about what you're going to do to rectify those mistakes. So that's risky, that's demonstrating some courage, because you have to put it out there as to what you're going to do, and then it becomes really critical to follow through and actually do that. I think one of the things that we found in our work for being open and honest is also the flip side, which is to do a very good job of listening empathically. So it's not just sharing and being vulnerable, what it is about you and your organization that needs to be improved upon, but to really proactively identify through listening what have we done perhaps that have harmed you, our stakeholders, that we didn't even know about. And that requires a very different kind of leadership. It's much more quiet. I think this is where introverts can come to the fore and be strong, because that listening ability is so important to come off as open and honest. To be competent, I think in our work we found that it really does involve building competence also, empowering and engaging your stakeholders, collaborating with them to solve the problems that caused those trust violations in the first place. So the best leaders and best organizations we've worked with have achieved incredible results, not because they had a clearly laid out path, but because they were willing to say, you know, we don't know everything, how can you help us? And as a result of that, they achieved so many more transformative results than if they tried to do it through a more controlling fashion. And finally, to be compassionate, and I think this is where almost organizations fall short, and I would challenge the executives that spoke this morning about this, and that is, when you do actually fix the trust violation, when you do rebuild trust, when you succeed, you have to share generously in the results. And of course, there's so much angst, there's so much upset right now, the 47% or the 1%. I think it's because in the last 30 or 40 years, that widening gap between who succeeds and gets the benefits of that success organizationally and who doesn't succeed or doesn't get the benefit has only gotten incredibly wide, which just breeds cynicism. I really think that this consortium really can help to change the debate. I think that's one of the great things about this event today. I think we as members can work with the consortium to really courageously call out both bad behavior and, as was mentioned towards the end of the first panel, be aggressive at finding some good behavior that isn't really getting the kind of public relations or publicity that it deserves. I think we need to communicate much more clearly and proactively with opinion leaders, not just the public relation function of for-profit companies, but we as academics have to learn how to engage with those people who shape opinion, whether it's in government or other institutions. Otherwise, that good news will probably never get properly heard. One of the great things I think that Professor Hurley is going to be endeavoring to do is to try to establish the metrics. What do we really mean when we're talking about trustworthiness or trusting behavior? There's still a lot of confusion, and that can be very important. And finally, once we figure out what's going well, what's going poorly, how do we measure it? We really need to disseminate those best practices. I call it being an evangelist for positive change. I think that's one of the roles that an institution like Fordham can appreciate, is we have to go out and spread that gospel of good news about here's what it is to be a trustworthy leader in an organization.